or visit us on the web at superiораluminumdesign.com.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning. Have you ever known anybody? I know somebody who I'm going to describe without naming him. He had some ideas in the course of his life, and he always said, if I ever win the lottery or something like this, I'm going to make this happen and that happen. And then all of a sudden, instead of winning the lottery, he lost his job. And it was upon losing his job and then panicking that he had no way to make ends meet, that he suddenly clicked into those ideas that he had been talking about forever and actually made them work, made them pay a salary for himself, and it's just an amazing story. When you look at this country and you say, why is it that once we started this country, all of a sudden a lot of inventions started happening? We've talked about this before. Some people will say because we had patent laws that they didn't have access to under the king's rule, right? Others will say it was the freedom. I often wonder if it was neither. Well, maybe both of those in addition to. How about I'll say it that way? The fact that there was a need. I mean, you went from a place, Europe was pretty much, I mean, you had buildings, you had infrastructure. They came over here, what'd they have? They had trees, they had dirt. Yeah. They had a panic attack. Well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? And suddenly ideas started coming to them. It's an amazing thing about us human beings that we have these brains that if we're comfortable, we don't use them. Mm-hmm. And if sometimes we get a little bit anxious or nervous, we start to use them. There is this wonderful book here we're going to talk about. It's called Insight Out. Get ideas out of your head and into the world. Tina Seelig is the author. She has been studying this whole phenomenon of how ideas come to us and how we put them into action. And she is going to tell you that you can make those ideas happen. You don't have to wait for that bottom. You don't have to get to the bottom of the what do they call it? Get to the bottom before you can start rising to the top. Yes. She is a professor of the practice in the Department of Management, Science, and Engineering at the Stanford School of Engineering, the executive director of the Stanford Technology Ventures Program, the recipient of the prestigious Gordon Prize from the National Academy of Engineering for her pioneering work in engineering education. Wow. Probably going to talk over my head. Tina Seelig. Good morning, Tina. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to chat with you this morning.
Well, and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from California, and right near Stanford University.
Well, thank you for getting up early to be on the air with us.
Yeah, well, my pleasure.
Isn't it interesting how, I mean, when you mention California, I mean, so many ideas came out of California when California was young. There's something about being in a new place. You have to, I guess, dig into your brain for an idea.
Yeah, well, I think we feel that we're on the frontier here, both physically and intellectually and spiritually, but anyone can do it. It's really a state of mind.
One of the things, I don't know if, I'm not bringing politics into your conversation, I promise, but one of the things Donald Trump said yesterday in his speech was that I guess when you're living in Brooklyn, Manhattan is the dream, you know? And he always had this dream to build buildings in Manhattan, and I guess he was told, you know, that's a pipe dream. And of course, we know the rest of the story. He made it happen.
Well, it's interesting you bring up all these examples. In our office at Stanford, we've got a couple of things written in very large letters on the walls. One says, every problem is an opportunity. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. And that's one of the things we teach our students, is to look at the world as opportunity-rich. The idea is that when you stumble upon a problem, whether it's something really mundane or something that feels really monumental, that really that's an opportunity for you. And if you can solve that problem for yourself, you probably are going to solve that problem for other people as well. Yeah. The other thing we have written is that entrepreneurs do much more than imaginable with much less than seems possible. And so what we teach them is how to leverage limited resources to really make amazing things happen.
Yeah, I love that. I love the very spirit that you seem to embrace, which is that positive, don't worry about it, you can do it kind of attitude. But so what is you've studied our brains? I mean, you've studied the what do you call it? Psychology?
Mm-hmm.
You've studied us, right? What is it that clicks into place when there's suddenly a need?
Well, really good question. Now, I did my PhD in neuroscience a few years ago, and I can certainly tell you that we don't understand how the brain works, okay? So, newsflash. But I can tell you that the attitudes that we have are a huge part of our ability to bring our ideas to life. In fact, in my book that you mentioned, Insight Out, it's really about the attitudes and the actions that are required to move you through the process from inspiration to implementation. And that there is a well-charted path that you move through, and those people like Donald Trump or someone who writes a book or someone who starts a company goes through this path from imagination to creativity to innovation to entrepreneurship, and that this is something that can be learned and can be mastered.
How do you tell the person that in order to implement their ideas, they have to have a little bit of no fear? Because, doing something like that moving forward, that's kind of scary, and that takes them out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, so getting out of your comfort zone is really important, and understanding your risk profile. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and from my perspective, there are 5 different types of risks. People, if I asked you, are you a risk taker, you'd probably view it as a binary thing. Yes, I am, or I'm not. But it's actually more nuanced than that, because you can be a financial risk taker, a physical risk taker, an emotional risk taker, social risk taker, and an intellectual risk taker. And for example, for me, I am a very big social risk taker and emotional risk taker, but I'm not a financial risk taker or a physical risk taker. So it's interesting to realize what your own risk profile is, and then to think about other people that you might need to have on your team who are willing to take different types of risks.
The team part of this is interesting too, because as a team, we often have to be open-minded to other people's ideas. If our egos get in the way, then we stand in the way of something bigger than all of us.
Yes, being able to work on a team is an amazing skill. In fact, at our classes at Stanford, so much of the work is done in teams, even though it's hard. And I really say, the teams in my classes find it very challenging because, the problems I give don't have one right answer. And so there's a lot of negotiation that has to go on as people try to figure out the path they're going to take. But guess what? That's true in, the work world as well. That you get out into the world where there aren't one right answer to the problems we face, and therefore you need to be able to negotiate with other people.
Well, we have a great example of teamwork just down the road from here. It's called Disney World.
Yeah.
The whole Disney thing was, I mean, one guy kind of started it, and that's the name you know. But the truth is, that's a team. It's always been a team.
This is super important. The model I present in my new work in this book is called the Invention Cycle. And the reason it's a cycle is because when you get to the end, to the entrepreneurship stage, the key thing you need to do is inspire others. And in that inspiring others, you're inspiring other people's imagination. And Disney World is a perfect example, right? People come in, are inspired, and that stimulates their creativity, their innovation, and their entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, just new ideas. And sometimes the same thing that is already out there gets used for a different purpose, and everybody goes, gosh, I didn't know you could do that with this.
Exactly.
I mean, it happens all the time. This is very exciting. I love this topic because, I mean, it really is what moves us forward. It keeps us from being stagnant, and I truly believe we all have this within us. And as much as I say that, I also know that most of us don't use it.
It really is our responsibility to teach people at the youngest ages how to tap into their creativity. This is something, all kids are creative, right? I mean, you were creative as a kid. I was creative as a kid. Our kids are creative. And yet what happens? Why, when we get to be adults, do so many people say they're not creative? And I believe it comes down to our education system. We are given so many problems with, one right answer that ability to come up with a whole diverse set of solutions really gets beaten out of us. And I don't think we should, kill everything in our education system, but we need to bake in also opportunities for young people to really stretch their imagination and to realize that this is an incredibly important skill to have going forward.
Wow, I love that.
And that's something that you do stress in your book. I mean, you point out these different factors and things that people want to do, but they usually don't do.
Right. And the thing is, they're not so complicated. This is not rocket science. It's hard work. The process of going through bringing your ideas to life is certainly takes effort, but it's not so complicated that we all can't learn it.
We need to take a little break, and we'll be right back. I have so much more I want to ask, a few things I want to tell you as well. Tina Seelig is our guest. Her book is called Insight Out. Get ideas out of your head and into the world. And whoever had the idea to put the 3 kernels of popcorn on the cover was a genius.
That was my idea.
That was your idea. That is a wonderful.
Congratulations.
I mean, you couldn't have come up with a better way to illustrate in very simple form what you're talking about with this topic.
Thank you so much.
That is awesome. All right, we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Partly sunny today with a thunderstorm in spots this afternoon. Our high 90 to 97. Clear to partly cloudy tonight, low 73 to 76. Tomorrow, partly sunny, a thunderstorm around, mainly inland. Our high 90 to 95. Friday, clouds, some sun with a few thunderstorms around, again, mainly inland. High 91 to 94. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Steve Travis.
Here's what you may have missed on the John Tesh Radio Show.
Fidgeting can make it easier to lose weight. Many couples think that once they're married, all their issues with in-laws will disappear, but Steinhardt says a marriage magnifies these problems, so if you're having family clashes with potential in-laws, it's best to resolve those issues before you get married. Just like couples can take out a loan for a house or a new car, there's been a huge surge in loan companies catering to wannabe parents.
Intelligence for your life on the John Tesh Radio Show. Don't miss this stuff.
Don't get caught without your daily source of senior deals. Pick up your copy of the Senior Voice newspaper. It's your source for schedule and events tailored to seniors, with information you need, like a list of free events in the area. We even have Tom's Picks, a free referral for people who are looking for a company to do work for them. Tom's Picks will refer the company to you that fits your needs. And all we ask in return is that you tell them where you heard about them. For more information, call Tom's Picks, 352-804-1223. And pick up your copy of the Senior's Voice at most any business up and down the 200 corridor.
Now read Ocala Downtown Newspaper online.
All right, 17 minutes after 10 o'clock. I love this topic because I love innovative thinking, etc. And I'm always amazed at inventions. Tina Seelig is our guest. Insight Out is the book. Get ideas out of your head and into the world. So I want to tell you something. This was not an original idea, but there was a barrier for me, and I want to tell you about the barrier. It has to do with when I was a much younger man, I was interested in having music as a career. I was living in New York, and I had an agency that represented me. And because it was basically just me and another guy, we were a duo, we didn't command as much money as like a 6-piece band would command, okay? So the 6-piece bands were getting all the jobs, and us 2 guys were basically sitting in the office waiting for them to tell us, oh, you got a gig. Go drive to it and play it and make some money, okay? So I was tired of just waiting, doing nothing. And I literally said, you know what? I'm watching these guys, how they do it. They're basically just on the phone talking to people. So I'm going to go talk to people. I got out. I went to all the different places that might hire musicians. And you know what? In just a few weeks, we were booked full, completely. So I didn't make up the idea, but I used the idea. But the barrier was what I wanted to talk about. It was the belief that somebody else had to do it for me, and the fact that I realized they weren't was what broke the barrier for me. That's when I said, forget it. I'm not going to wait on these people anymore.
Well, this is so fabulous because what you were doing is leveraging the opportunities around you. You weren't just waiting for something to come to you. You were going out and seizing the opportunity. And this is true for so many of us. The opportunities are waiting for us to pick them up on the ground, and yet we are often, sort of say, well, that's not for me.
So the guy who I described in the beginning, who had a good job, and that good job was actually in his way. Because he wasn't hungry. He wasn't using his ideas.
Yeah, I am a huge believer that most problems are opportunities. And you need to look at them through that lens. That when you come upon a challenge in your own life, you go, okay, what are the resources I have at my disposal? And in fact, this is really a stumbling block for a lot of people. They think that money is the major resource they have. But think about the context they have, the knowledge they have. One of my favorite and I guess most famous exercises I've done, because it's the opening story in my book, What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20, is that I gave my students $5 and 2 hours to make as much money as possible. And, of course, there were the teams that did things that were very expected, like a lemonade stand or a car wash, starting with the $5. But the team that made the most money didn't use the $5. They realized the $5 was actually a limitation and a distraction, and that their skills were actually much, much more valuable than the $5. And they did things they earned at, several $100s in 2 hours just by looking at the skills they had and the problems in the community. And they did things, they started a photo booth at the school dance, or they started selling reservations to popular restaurants on Saturday night. All sorts of things that they saw were problems in their midst, and it certainly didn't even need the $5.
Oh, now, wow. That's cool.
The most exciting and the most profitable solution to this was the team that didn't use the $5 and didn't use the 2 hours. What they did is they realized their 3-minute presentation time in class was the most valuable thing they had, and they sold that to a company that wanted to recruit all the students in the class.
Wow.
For $650.
$600? How much?
$650.
$650.
Come in and basically, give a sales pitch to join their firm, because they were looking for people who were creative problem solvers. So the fact is that, we have so many resources in our midst, just like you when you were in this band, right?
Right.
You could have just sat there waiting, but you realized you had a telephone. You had your selling skills.
Yeah, right.
All you had to do was pick up the phone and start calling, and you filled your schedule.
In my case, I was walking. I was literally walking from bar to bar in New York. Yeah. Okay, so give us some thoughts on. Okay, let's say somebody's listening, they're excited, and they say, well, I don't want to wait until I quit my job or get fired from my job. I want to stay in my job, but I want to launch my idea right now. What would you tell them to do mindset-wise? What do they need to do?
Great. Super. So this is the really, really important question. So you need to start with figure out what problem you want to solve, right? So imagination requires engaging and then envisioning what might be different. So what might be different? What is it that you want to change? You then move to the creativity stage where you say, I am motivated to solve this problem. You need to pick something you're motivated to do. If you're not motivated, it's not going to propel you forward. But that motivation stimulates some small experiments. You don't have to start big. This is a huge problem for a lot of people. They think, I need a lot of money, I need a lot of time, I need to quit my job. No, do some quick prototypes to test your idea. A great example of this is my friend and colleague Jeff Hawkins, who had started many years ago the Palm Pilot. When he wanted to start that idea, you know what he did? He didn't start with engineering, although he's a talented engineer. He got a block of wood the size of a Palm Pilot and carried it around with him to see if this is something he might carry around. Like, did the idea even make sense from that perspective?
Oh, wow, that is amazing. But obviously, before everybody had such a similar kind of device.
Yeah, exactly. You needed to see, would you actually carry it in your pocket? You could, for restaurants, you can put something on the menu and see if actually people order it. You didn't even need to make it.
Do you know what is worth a lot to me? Is listening to you. You are like a pep rally. I mean, you really have a very exciting way of making us all believe we can do anything.
But you can, and that's the point. We all have the ability to realize our dreams, but we need to be given the confidence and the skills to do that.
Did you have an aha moment yourself? Did you stumble on something and not only come up with an idea or an invention, but also launch this whole philosophy that you're expressing in the book?
So this is really interesting, because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm looking at this fully finished book, and it looks like it was born fully formed. But that's the furthest from the truth for any of us. Just like your band, like the book, it starts with the seeds of an idea, and then it grows over time. I've been working in this field for 16 years. And so over that time, I've been doing a lot of experiments, seeing what works. I've been really focusing and reframing and looking at things from different ways. And each one of these steps has really opened up brand new insights. And that's what it takes. It takes time. We so often read in the paper about some invention, but we don't see everything that went into getting to that point.
Well, and you know what I always say? Whenever people are down on the economy and they say, the world is coming to an end, everything's... I will always say, you know what's going to happen 1 year from today? A copy of Fortune magazine is going to come out, and they're going to be profiling some entrepreneur who right now is poor, and 1 year from now is going to be wealthy.
Yeah.
there's always going to be somebody, right?
I love that. In fact, I was back east, giving a talk a couple years ago. It was in the middle of the recession, and talking to the cab driver and trying to explain to him there are opportunities everywhere. He was complaining about no business, no jobs. It's like, wow, problems are opportunities. What is it that people need? How can you be helpful? How can you contribute? What can you leverage? In Silicon Valley, and definitely around the world as well, some of the most successful companies were born out of very deep, recessions.
Yeah.
How do you handle the people in your circle? Because sometimes they're not supportive, whether they're family or friends.
I love that question. I get that from my students all the time. And I always say resistance to your ideas is a gift. Now, why is that? Well, it gives you the opportunity to test the strength of your own convictions. If people always say, yes, that's a great idea, well, then you're in a situation where you never know if it's really your motivation or someone else who's goading you on. But if someone says, I don't think that's going to work, you go, you know what? I really feel confident. I feel really that I'm on the right track. Then you can really see where your own motivation lies.
Just look at those big ships in the harbor, those gigantic cruise ships. Who would ever thought that would even float, let alone get people to pay money to ride on it, right?
Exactly.
Like so many other things. I mean, everything we use in our life, somebody invented. Somebody made a business out of. I mean, I'm looking around my desk here in my office. I mean, magazines, books, coffee cups. These all started out as someone's dream. And anybody can do that. And the thing that's really important is this is not just about starting companies. It's about starting anything. It could be a trip around the world.
Well, and you kind of told us that your let's see, when you were talking about what was the word again? You were talking about money versus social versus what was it? The thing you were willing to risk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You and you kind of told us about social, and that's kind of how I am too. I'm very reluctant. I don't want to get, it's kind of like you don't want to get a new dog because you know the dog's going to die eventually.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to get a new girlfriend because you know she's going to leave you eventually.
Yeah, right. That's right.
I don't take social risks either, by the way.
Really, even as a radio, interviewer, as a host, isn't that a social risk? You're out there talking to people.
That's not risky though. Risky is.
Well, this is interesting. The people who take the risk don't view it as risky. And so just like you might say, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going to jump out of an airplane, with a parachute." Well, I'm not going to do that. But the person who does it says it doesn't feel risky. I feel very confident in my abilities. I feel confident that the parachute is tied, is wrapped up correctly. So actually, most people are trying to squeeze the risk out of things. Right, and so this is really important. People look at venture capitalists, for example, and say, "Oh, they're risk takers." They're not. They want the best team.
See, this is where I wish. This is where I wish it wasn't a radio show. I wish we were sitting across having coffee, because then the clock wouldn't be looking at me, and I could ask you to explain about your own social unwillingness to be risky. You're a fun guest and very inspirational. The book is here. Call me if you want the book. I will give you the one that was sent to us. 622-9622 is the number. It's called Insight Out. Tina Seelig is who you will look up on Amazon. Seelig. The rest of us have to go buy it. And I mentioned Amazon. I'm guessing that's a good place to start. Do you have a website?
That's a good place to start. No, but people can follow me on Twitter at tseelig. And I am happy to. People can write to me. I always answer every email.
All right, I'm going to follow you right now on Twitter. Let me sign up for the Twitter thing, or sign on to it, I should say.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really my pleasure.
Tina, thank you. I'm not kidding. I think your enthusiasm is worth money. Good morning. You're on the air. Did you want the book?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me your first name.
Ken.
Ken. Okay. You've got it. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wow. That's some echo in there. Tina.
Ken, tell me what you think of the book.
Tina, that was great. Thank you so much for being on the air with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Charges in a case of homegrown terror in New York City.
Muther Omar Saleh is an American citizen who, according to court papers, was planning an attack on New York City landmarks and tourist attractions. The college in Queens where he's enrolled specializes in aeronautics. He's accused of supporting ISIS and searching the internet for information on pressure cooker bombs.
Fox Radio's Tanya J. Powers. Tropical Depression Bill moving inland after making a mess in coastal Texas.
Like on Matagorda Island, mostly due to rain washing out roadways.
Fox Radio's Evan Brown. Houston suburbs could get up to 8 inches of rain today. And a city in Wisconsin changing its rules to bar the use of kangaroos as service animals after a woman took a baby kangaroo into a McDonald's claiming it was a therapy animal to help her cope with emotional stress. Local report says the Beaver Dam Council voted to define a service animal as a dog or miniature horse. Fox News. We report, you decide.
For over 75 years, Geico's kept an eye on the future, keeping customers happy with things like 24/7 customer support and emergency roadside service. And to